All right, so I was reading this morning how townhouses are what we like to develop at the moment. The idea is you buy a falling down family home on a large block in the burbs, knock it over, and instead of building another detached family home, you build 4 or maybe 6 townhouses. And this appeals. People have smaller families. People want to live close to where the things they want to do are, to schools, to parks, to shops, to that sort of thing. All that's quite normal. But we're probably going to see a decrease in the number of large family homes and an increase in the number of townhouses. And one of the things about townhouses is they're a very efficient way to live, but they tend to lack outdoor space. They certainly don't have large backyards. Our next guest is a property developer and expert in residential buildings for over 40 years. Steve Chandler, good morning.
Morning, Tom.
So is the townhouse the future?
Well, I believe so. It's definitely the future. Let's say 20, 30 years, for the next 20 or 30 years, particularly in the middle ring sort of suburbs, where land is more cost effective out in the greater outer suburbs. Then people will still build individual homes, but if you want to be closer to the city for work or recreation, whatever it might be, the middle ring, then the land starts to become too expensive for people to buy nowadays. And therefore, if you can put 4 townhouses on what was a single lot for one home, 4 into 1 is a much better use of land, and it also makes it more affordable. I won't say affordable, but more affordable than buying that individual home.
Does that mean that future generations of children will grow up without knowing, what a large backyard is like?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I grew up, quite call it free range, if you like. We used to run around all over the place, and Mum would say after school, you come home, dump your bag, and she'd say, be home for dinner, before dark, that sort of thing. Nowadays, security is a real problem. People are really worried about safety, etc. So look, the quarter-acre block is long gone because no one can afford it.
Because I remember, and I have to have been just turned 10 years old, late 1977 with a friend. We were both 10, and we went from queue on the tram into the city to watch Star Wars at the cinema, and we missed the first showing of the movie because it was so popular and crowded, and then we just waited for 2 hours and then watched the next one. And, our parents just thought that was normal. That's all right. We're only 10 years old.
I lived in Sydney at that time, and 45-minute bus trip into the city. And, 10 years, 11 years of age, Mum would give you some money and off you'd go and be home before dark. It's amazing.
Yeah. Look, you can't fault the logic of the townhouse. As you say, land is, relatively speaking, far more valuable. We need to put more people where the infrastructure like roads and public transport and all that sort of thing already exists. But it just will be a bit sad to see, the concept of the large detached family home over time disappearing.
Definitely, I lament that. As an older person now, looking back on what I grew up with, it's a completely different world. But that is the world that we've got, and we've got to make the most of it. You talk about playing cricket on the street and stuff like that. If you think about a townhouse development, it's got a very long driveway, so the kids in the neighbourhood can still play their cricket, in the driveway of the townhouse instead of on what are heavily trafficked roads nowadays. So there are some sort of benefits in that. Yeah, you don't have the big backyard. You're not going to have the swing set and all that sort of stuff. But developers pay contributions to the local councils for council to provide facilities because of this medium density, that the additional population, etc. So councils, as long as constituents keep pressure on councils to provide, the recreation areas, the parks and things, around the suburbs so that, kids can play, then it's a change in lifestyle over generations. And as long as the facilities are there, you got to say it's not such a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. Look, thank you for your time. Steve Chandler there, property developer.